Randomness by Deborah Bennett. This is a book summary. Ever felt like the universe is just messing with you? Like when you hit every red light on your way to work, even though you left early just this once? Or you're behind that one car in the fast lane doing 40, and it's always on a Monday? Or how about the vending machine saga? You feed it your last dollar, it wears like it's working, and nothing, so you try again, and it eats your money again. Was it fate? A sign? The ghost of karma haunting your snack time? What if I told you it wasn't fate? It wasn't karma, and it definitely wasn't some cosmic vendetta against your lunch break. What if it was something far more mysterious and far more mathematical? It's randomness, and not just the kind that ruins your day. We're talking about deep, ancient, world-shaping randomness. Today, we're diving headfirst into Randomness by Deborah Bennett. A mind-bending journey that travels from the ancient temples of Mesopotamia to modern medical testing labs, from sacred rituals to Vegas poker tables, all to answer one surprisingly tricky question. What does it really mean when something happens by chance? You might think you already know the answer, but hang tight, because by the end of this ride, you'll never look at a coin toss the same way again. Section 1. The Dice of Destiny. Let's rewind the clock. Not just a few years. Let's go way, way back. Before statistics, before science, even before numbers had names. In ancient Egypt, long before the concept of probability existed, people were already tossing bones. Not in games, but in ceremonies, rituals, decisions, life or death calls. You see, people didn't think the outcome was random. They thought it was divine. According to Deborah Bennett, ancient civilizations across the globe used dice-like objects, from animal knuckle bones called astrogali to palm nuts and carved sticks, not to roll for fun, but to receive messages from the gods. In ancient Greece, this belief was baked into culture. Picture the scene: a clash of warriors, swords gleaming under the Mediterranean sun. One must strike first, but how do they decide? They don't duel it out with logic. They pull lots from a helmet. This wasn't just for fairness. It was a ritual. In Homer's Iliad, they even shook the helmet, turned their backs to it, and prayed. Every precaution to remove human influence. The randomness? It wasn't chaos, it was sacred order, a direct line to divine will. And this wasn't just a Greek thing. Bennett tells us about ancient Hebrews casting lots to assign land, choose leaders, even decide who should live and who should die. In China, Confucian scholars used yarrow stalks and coins to consult the I Ching, letting chance decide the fate of empires. But here's the twist. They weren't rolling dice to surrender to chaos. No. They believed that chance outcomes were how the gods spoke. They believed randomness was order we just didn't understand. Think about that. What we now call random was once seen as the purest form of guidance, the voice of fate, stripped of human bias. And in a way, can you blame them? When faced with life's biggest questions, who gets punished? Who gets the land? Who survives the night? What feels fairer than chance? Only, as Bennett explores, it wasn't always fair. Not really, because randomness, while impartial, doesn't play by human rules. And that misunderstanding, that tension between what randomness is and what we think it should be, that's where things start to get really interesting. Section 2. The Illusion of Fairness. Fast forward to today, and guess what? We're still clinging to the same old rituals. Flip a coin, draw straws, spin the wheel. We may have swapped goat bones for poker chips, but deep down, we're still just trying to make chance feel fair. But here's the twist. The deliciously cruel twist. Our perception of fairness, it's fundamentally broken. As Deborah Bennett explains, we want randomness to behave the way we think it should. We want it to have a memory, a conscience, a pattern. Like believing that after flipping 3 heads in a row, a tail is due. That surely, the universe is going to balance things out. That's the gambler's fallacy, and it's not just casual players who fall for it. Even seasoned pros get swept up in this seductive illusion, because our brains are wired to search for patterns even when none exist. Think about slot machines. We feel hot streaks. We get gut feelings. We believe in luck, karma, energy shifts. But chance doesn't care about your feelings. It doesn't owe you a tail after a triple head combo. It's not out to get you. It's just not out to help you either. Bennett dives deep into one of the most famous examples of how bad humans are at interpreting probability, the cab problem from Kahneman and Tversky's research. Here's the setup. A hit and run occurs. Two cab companies operate in the city. 85% of the cabs are green, 15% are blue. A witness says it was a blue cab. The witness is shown to be 80% reliable in identifying colors under the same conditions. Now, what's the chance it was actually a blue cab? Most people, go with their gut and say 80%. After all, the witness seemed pretty sure. But the truth? The real calculated probability is only 41%. Because most people ignore the base rate, the fact that most cabs are green. We focus on the vivid, immediate, emotionally compelling detail, the witness testimony, while tuning out the colder, statistical backdrop. This, Bennett points out, is a recurring flaw in human reasoning. Whether we're jurors in a courtroom, patients getting medical test results, or friends placing bets on a coin toss, we're consistently fooled by randomness. And even experts aren't immune. In one stunning example, Bennett shares a study where doctors, yes, medical professionals, were asked to interpret a positive test result for a rare disease that affects 1 in 1,000 people. The test has a 5% false positive rate. The correct answer? The person has only about a 2% chance of actually having the disease. And yet, many doctors guessed 95%. They overlooked the rarity of the disease. Again, the base rate, because the test result felt more convincing. It's not that people are stupid, it's that chance doesn't play by the emotional rules our minds are wired to trust. Bennett reminds us, randomness isn't intuitive. It's slippery, it hides in plain sight. And the moment we think we've got it figured out, it proves us wrong. Section 3, From Gambling to Genius. So how did we go from sacred dice rolls and oracles to complex theories of probability and statistical modeling? Strangely enough, it all started with gamblers. As Bennett lays out, the ancients had dice, coins, and games galore. But for centuries, no one bothered to ask how likely an outcome was. Why? Because the answer was always the same. The gods willed it. Randomness wasn't a problem to solve. It was a message to interpret. A divine whisper, not a math problem. But then came the Renaissance, and with it, a shift in thinking. Science began to challenge superstition. Curiosity started to replace ritual. And somewhere around the 16th century, a few mathematicians and gamblers found themselves asking a dangerous question. Can we predict the unpredictable? Enter the famous correspondence between Blaise Pascal and Pierre de Fermat, who tried to settle a gambling dispute over how to split a pot if a game was interrupted. This wasn't about divine will anymore. This was cold, hard logic driven by the desire to win. And thus probability theory was born, not in a monastery or a laboratory, but at the gambling table. From there, things snowballed. The math of chance became the backbone of statistics, insurance, epidemiology, quantum mechanics, machine learning. Everything from weather forecasts to your favorite streaming algorithm owes a quiet thank you to some 17th century bet over a dice game. And as Bennett points out, it's not just that gamblers inspired probability, it's that the unpredictability of games became the proving ground for ideas that now shape the world. So the next time you're at a casino, watching the roulette wheel spin, or even just guessing whether it's going to rain on your wedding day, remember, what began as a roll of the dice in a smoky room led to the math that runs our modern lives. And it all started with a single question: what are the odds? Section 4, Random Numbers, Real Consequences. Let's talk about randomness in the modern world. Not just dice or coins, but the kind of randomness that decides your future, your health, even your life. Deborah Bennett doesn't just explore randomness in theory, she brings us face to face with the real-world consequences of getting it wrong. Take the 1970 U.S. Selective Service Draft Lottery. To make the Vietnam War draft fair, they put all 366 birth dates into plastic capsules and dropped them into a large glass jar. One by one, they pulled the capsules, assigning draft numbers. Sounds fair, right? Everyone gets an equal shot. But there was a tiny, overlooked detail. The capsules were added to the jar in order. January 1st went in first, December 31st last. And while they did try to mix them, they didn't mix them well enough. What happened? Those December birthdays, the ones that went in last, floated to the top. And when they started pulling from the top, young men born in the last months of the year were far more likely to be drafted first. An entire generation learned a brutal lesson that day. Fair isn't always fair, and random can be rigged by something as simple as the order you load the jar, and it doesn't stop there. Bennett walks us through the eerily misunderstood world of false positives in medical tests. Imagine you take a test for a rare disease. The test is 95% accurate. It comes back positive. Would you panic? Most people would. Most doctors even would. But the truth? If the disease is rare, say 1 in 1,000 people have it, then the chance you actually have it even after testing positive is still just 2%. Wait, what? That's the danger of ignoring base rates, the background odds. Without understanding how rarity interacts with false positives, we get swept away by emotional reasoning. And that kind of mistake, it doesn't just cause anxiety. It can lead to misdiagnosis, unnecessary treatments, and real harm. And then there's the question of digital randomness. Computers, it turns out, are really bad at being random. They follow instructions, logic, rules. So how do they generate random numbers? By using algorithms, pre-programmed steps that look chaotic, but are ultimately predictable. Bennett points out that while these pseudo-random numbers might be good enough for games and simulations, they're not truly random. And in fields like cryptography or scientific modeling, that difference matters. In fact, some experts argue we don't even have a universal definition of randomness. Is it unpredictability, lack of pattern, independence? Even the experts are still debating it. So the next time you see a number pop out of a slot machine, behind the curtain is a whole lot of messy math. And sometimes, that mess spills over into your real life. Section 5. So why does any of this matter? Because randomness isn't just for games. It's the unseen force quietly driving our everyday lives. It's in the stock market, where sudden crashes leave economists scrambling for explanations. It's in weather models, where one butterfly can, literally, change everything. It's in medical diagnoses, DNA testing, insurance rates, sports analytics, lotteries, election polling, and every single Google search result you've ever clicked. We live in a world where decisions are increasingly driven by data and probability. But as Bennett warns us, most of us walk through it blindfolded, trusting our instincts, gut feelings, and flawed logic to make decisions that could change our lives. Her message is clear. If we want to make better choices, we need to understand the strange, slippery logic of chance. Don't rely on intuition. Don't fall for the gambler's fallacy. Don't get fooled by patterns that don't exist. Learn the math. Question your first instinct. See the fog for what it is, an opportunity to think clearer, not panic faster. Because when you understand randomness, you gain power. You stop fearing the chaos and start navigating it. Randomness is everywhere. It hides behind the curtain of our daily lives, shaping our stories in invisible ways. Sometimes it feels like fate. Other times it looks like chaos. But it's neither. It's the code of the cosmos. The background music of every decision, every risk, every outcome. And if we can learn to hear it, understand it, respect it, then maybe, just maybe, we can outsmart the odds and write our own story. So next time you flip a coin, roll a die, or wonder why something happened the way it did, don't shrug and say it's just chance. Look closer. It might be a message from the universe, or just the math behind the mystery. Like, subscribe, and tap that bell. Because when it comes to knowledge, nothing should be left to chance.